Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Citizen Bear. This is a podcast. We talk about some of the themes in my book, The Demonstrative Citizen, The Revelation of Two Dragons, and many of the topics that have become very real in our current society. And so while the book's important, I really thought it would be interesting to take this time in the podcast to reach out and really talk some of the things that are important to me and I'm passionate about and in the book, and put my thoughts out there. And you can take them, you can leave them, but I hope you think about them. In this episode, and I call this episode The Struggle for Our Streets, I want to look at the struggle that is openly going on in our society and put my take on the situation. Once again, the lines in this matter are very clear and have been intentionally blurred. Unfortunately, there is a great deal to consider and even more at stake for free society, and I really do believe that we are in the midst of something tremendous in our society, and the time has come to see it clearly and to fight back on it. And unfortunately, we are doing that. In the book, this is a very important concept. There's a constant undertow of this within the book. And there are many good things that come with it. And we're going to talk about that in the next episode a little bit. There are many forces that come to bear against the people that follow Bear and his people. And it is a large grassroots force, movement that turns into a massive militia movement, and a massive supply, logistical movement to help supply it, which leads ultimately, when some of the politics is settled, leads to a formation working with the government of transferring this militia movement into a civil defense movement sanctioned by the government and working with the government, and there is a transition to that. But before that really happens, even after it happens, frankly, there is a fight for the streets. There is a fight over ideology. And it is shocking that some of those who, and we're seeing this today, who you would think would want to have help or would want to see a change in course in violence and against those externally who want to hurt us and internally, who are bringing anarchy to our streets and death to our streets on a lot of different levels. You would think that they would want help with that. You would think that they would, support that movement, and they do just exactly the opposite. They take a big government mentality that they have to have their control, their power is more important than anything else that is happening in society or in the streets. And they bring a force against Bear's people that is crushed. It sends shockwaves through society, but it also starts the movement that it is very clear that the people have moved in a direction and that government needs to move in that direction too. It also occurs later in the book where there is something of a civil war going on in one of the West Coast states, and they're fighting. And this city has really, one of the key states, capitals, has devolved into, I don't even know what the word is, a third world little area. And it's Bear's people he pulls out the militia that he started with, 1st Pennsylvania, and he takes that militia west with him. He's flown west to help the West Coast militia deal with this and take back the city and, frankly, remove the governor and reestablish it, because the governor's looking to, frankly, ally himself with external enemies in an act of fear and somewhat cowardice and political bias and, yada, yada, yada. But Bear deals with this fight on our streets, and in the course of that later interpretation, he also runs into huge humanitarian and good things in the society. He sees the best of people in the worst possible moments, and he sees common humanity, and he really is taken back by it. He depends on it, but he truly sees it. He sees the good, and he sees God's hand using evil for good in this moment, and it's an incredible time. And I think that's chapter 14, but I could be wrong, or maybe it's a little earlier, 13. But he goes through this time, and he struggles for the streets. There is a fight. And one of the reasons for this is very simple. Marxist revolutions and revolutions of this kind always take place in the streets. You can talk about politics, you can talk about people running for office, but in the end, it is from the streets that these people rise up, and it is revolution in the streets. It is anarchy in the streets. It is threatening violence in the streets. It is drugs in the streets, whatever you want to say. And it forces a wide range of topics that we've talked in the past, particularly contributing to economic hardship and offering solutions to problems they created more often than not. So we're seeing that. And I want to kind of start talking about this a little bit. I think it's a really, really important topic. And it's something that I think we're seeing in our society right now. We're seeing pushback. As I said before, through the ballot box, we've kind of elected people to come in and say enough. And this is becoming a new day for us and in the world, pushing back on the authoritarian concept, pushing back on the Marxist mindset that has been entrenched in our society and is really kind of blooming, if you will, was blooming over the last so many years, and saying no more. This isn't good for us. Unfortunately, with people like this, you can't just say no more. You can't just say, well, arrest them, because they are truly violent and they are truly out of control and they are anarchist and they have to be controlled with real force. And that's all there is to it. It's an unfortunate reality that we've allowed to happen to us. It's gotten too far down the road. I want to reflect on a moment, though. I kind of want to take a second here and kind of start this with a memory I have, and I want to set a segue of the change in our world over the last little bit. During COVID, there was a moratorium, if you remember. There's a moratorium on everything, but there was a moratorium on fireworks. July 4th, they kind of canceled July 4th. How do you cancel July 4th, right? And they canceled, many municipalities canceled their city fireworks. You couldn't come out and see them. They didn't hold them. You couldn't watch them. There was going to be no 4th of July celebration. And I have a house out in the Pittsburgh area. I live outside of the Philly area most of the time. So I have family in both places. My wife and I were visiting family out there, and we were taking time. We have to help take care of her mom at the time, and so we were required to travel back and forth, and which was an awful experience, by the way. If you were traveling during COVID, it was talk about dystopian. It was really post-apocalyptic. If you were on the highways, stopping at a rest stop was like unbelievable. Anyway, in that time, we were at our house out there, and I was sitting on the lawn with my wife on the 4th of July in the evening as it got dark. And you would think that people would be cloistered in their houses and afraid, and no one was talking, and there were no fireworks, no joy in Mudsville. Right? But in truth, fireworks started everywhere. I've never seen so many fireworks. People weren't going to be denied. They started setting fireworks off in their own yards. To your left, to your right, in front of me, behind me, there were fireworks in it. And I mean, they were really good fireworks. People had gone out shopping. I don't know where they got all this stuff, but they were out putting these things off. They were going off all around us. And people were walking up and down the streets. We were waving and talking to each other from a distance. But we were waving and talking and laughing, and people were talking about these neighbors I had never even met. My wife's family has been out there. We took over her family's home, so that's where this house came from. And she grew up there. I mean, I've been going out there forever, like 40 years or more. And some of these people are new to the area. We didn't know them. They lived up the road a ways. I was meeting all kinds of people, and it was great. We were all laughing and watching the fireworks. People were walking to other areas to see different fireworks displays. And it happened since we have a little bit of a hill, I could just see about all of them. And it was just really amazing. It was an incredible time. And it was a time, and I got to tell you, the police out there are fabulous. I know we so many knock on the police, and I got to tell you that I've had nothing but good experiences with the law enforcement in that area, and great people. And they didn't interfere at all. As a matter of fact, they were very supportive, and they kind of just made sure that the community was safe and everything went forward. And they were great. They were great, and I, as always. So I mean, it was really an amazing time, and you know, people kind of had this note of defiance, like, I'm sorry, the 4th of July is not going to be canceled, and we are not going to just conform. And it was a great, great time, and everybody was happy. We were laughing. We're just tired of it all, and we didn't want to hear it. And we rose above the mandates and the demands and the edicts and all other things, and just, you can just kiss off. We're going to do what we're going to do, right? And it was a good, good time. And God bless, man. It was one of the best times. It was the best 4th of July I've ever had, and maybe the best 4th of July I ever will had. And it was truly grassroots and just outside the box, and a lovely time with all people together. It was about people. It wasn't about government. It was about people. Unfortunately, COVID really became a symbol of government control. And it really was. And looking back on it, I know we all tried to do our best through it, and people made different choices, and whether they get the shot or not get the shot, and how much you were going to rebel and how much you weren't going to rebel, how much your business was in trouble. And some of it depended on local leaders, how far they were going to enforce things. And some were quite unconscionable. But the attempt to really kind of suppress our liberties and kind of take this, it reminded me when we had that 4th of July celebration, it kind of reminded me of like the Grinch that stole Christmas. The government was going to steal the 4th of July too. They were going to lock you down further. There was going to be no joy. And it's like he stands up on the hill and he can hear the Who's down in Whoville singing, and he starts to realize what Christmas is really about. And really, it was one of those moments where people were kind of like, the government kind of woke up maybe. Maybe people started to wake up and realize what free society is really about. It's not about government edicts. It's about people and the American people and their desires. And they will find a way, and they will do what they want if pressed. And so I think that's a great expression. And I kind of want to take this, a great expression of free society, and I thought it was a great moment. It's a great moment to share, but we also have to move on. Unfortunately today, I really struggle with I see something on both sides of the state of Pennsylvania, and I think it's out in the world right now in a lot of different communities. I know people are out and about. I'm not saying everybody's like totally afraid, but I don't see that same spirit in people. I see people very cloistered in their homes. My house here, I have a lovely home. It sits on the edge of Amish country, and it's a little kind of farmland area. But it's a community, though. I live on the edge of a cul-de-sac, and they're beautiful, beautiful houses, but people don't come out so much. They're kind of cloistered in their houses, and I noticed this on the west side of the state. Same place, same people in many cases. They don't come out and talk anymore. They don't come out and see you. They very much are in their own lane, and that's it. They go to work, they come home, maybe they have an activity, they hide in the house. And that's indicative of something. I think we've come full circle on that grassroots thing that I experienced on the 4th of July that year, as opposed to what's going on now. And we've instilled, I think it really, I know there are a lot of reasons. There can be economic hardships, and people can be strained, and there's all kinds of things. We're tired, whatever, Weather was pretty hot this summer. But I have to say, I think the one thing that really is driving people to this is the political mindset out there. All the dystopian struggle that's going on in our society. And people are really, I think, becoming somewhat tired of the attacks. And we have been attacked a long time by what I believe is nothing more than a Marxist movement in our country. And I think if we look at a lot of the problems in our society and a lot of the anarchy issues that we see in our society and lawlessness, it all stems from this Marxist mindset to create it. And there are government leaders who are allowing it, who are pressing this. And now you've even got government leaders, they're not even trying to hide it anymore. They're using language like comrades and going out and talking about communism, and Marxism is the segue to communism. I mean, this is what's really going on in our society. And so I think we're starting to push back against it, yes, but there is so much hatred, so much political violence out there that I think people just are kind of taking a deep breath and going, and that's really a tragedy for a free society and a free world. And it acts as a heavy cloud over our world. And that's not something that a president or a governor or anybody else can really instill in people. That's kind of, grassroots. It's in their soul. They sense it off what's going on in the world, in the larger world with global conflicts also, what's going on with Russia, China, with Ukraine and Taiwan. And then you've got the Middle East is just like fire. So they're taking stock in this, and I know they want to push back on it. They voted to push back on it, and I think they should continue to vote to push back on this. But because failure to do that could lead to worse things. But they really feel this, and I think people feel the weight of it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to get involved. They're hoping that it'll just go away, and unfortunately, it won't. In so many words, I think that, we have to consider this. The root of this to be the struggle for our streets in this country and in the world, in the free world. There have been so many hostile actors, and they're not all just, it's wrong to say that every one of these people is a Marxist, but to say that they're empowered by the Marxist movement, I think is more often true than not. And I think that this is beginning to take an effect on society because people are just really shocked that this has really come to fruition and that how really serious it is. And it's forcing us to take a look at our society and how we're getting out there. Many become unwittingly involved in this violence. And, that's what I'm saying is they may not be attached to the Marxist movement, but, if you're a gang and you're dealing drugs and they ain't going to, and the Marxists benefit from the anarchy you create in the streets and they give you a pass. I don't know. It seems all pretty connected to me, but that's just fine. And this is part of the Marxist ideal that any antisocial behavior will do for the moment, just to overturn society, to break it up, to break it down, to force people not to feel free, not to feel safe, to look for alternatives, and create destruction. It is hate for hate's sake. It is destruction for destruction's sake. And this is a real detriment out there. And it's been taking place, and we've seen it, rear its head, even in the defunding the police movement. Good Lord, man. Your streets are on fire. You won't take help from the federal government, and then you start cutting your police force. Really? How does cutting your police force help reduce the crime? And we have to keep in mind that some of our cities in this country, particularly democratically led cities, unfortunately, have become some of the murder capitals of the world. They're some of the most violent cities in the world. That's shocking. That's in America. I know I'm an older guy, right? But, there was a time we had violence, but we didn't have violence like that. You came to America to be safe. Where, how did that happen? And it happened because we've allowed this Marxist movement and the push towards a new order to get roots. And they're promising you a new way forward, and they're going to give you nothing but a quantum leap backward. Many people have been drawn into this web of lies, and I have to tell you, it's incredibly disheartening. But I do understand how they can be sucked in. And I have to tell you, in many of our cities, it really is akin to, Batman here. The Joker's running your streets. Really. That's a frightening concept, that you're just not safe. And I've even had I've seen people who are learned people who are even fairly biased in their politics admit cities like Washington, D.C., Chicago, they've been harmed in the cities. They're not safe, and they don't feel safe. And that's a pretty revealing tell. And the numbers reveal it. I know some people go and say, oh, the numbers have been going down. The numbers have been going down. You know, Mark Twain once said there are three types of lies. There are lies, damn lies, and statistics. And I don't think these statistics really give you the whole story. I mean, let me tell you something. Crime's high if you're the victim. Crime's high. If you're walking down a street in this nation's capital and you get shot, killed, mugged, beaten up, accosted, raped, let me tell you, crime's high. That, especially if they get away with it, and they do. So we shouldn't really be, well, don't get so wrapped up in, well, it's down off its highs, and there's a statistic here and a statistic there. It's rampant and it's out of control, and we need to get our hands around this, and we need to make sure that I'm done with statistics. I'm done with intellectual experts. The intellectual experts have bodyguards. They're not getting mugged. Okay, Chuck Schumer has bodyguards. He walks down the street safe. Trust me. The rest of us, not so much. So we need to be a little thoughtful about this. And unfortunately, the media has just had a huge hand in all this because they are terribly biased and they don't really report the news anymore. They always have a slant towards this Marxist movement. And it is really frightening to see in our society how you can ignore what is going on in our world. And I know maybe you want to see change, maybe you want to see it, but this is just not the system. This will bring nothing but pain. It will bring nothing but darkness. It will bring nothing but downfall. And many of these people who are political leaders and economic leaders and even media leaders who think that they are going to be exempted from the pain are fools, because in every time a Marxist movement has succeeded, authoritarian regime gets put into power, they're usually the first ones to be killed, because what Stalin called the useful idiots have to go. I don't think we should at any point in time deny what's in front of our eyes. And we should not be afraid to look at this and step back and look at the larger picture and see how connected so many of these dots are anymore, and that this is really a deeply entrenched Marxist movement within our country, and that it is working very hard to destabilize our country. And we have to start supporting and fighting back. And we've voted for political leaders who are doing that, and they have to be cautious too. There are limits, but we always want to test that and make sure our society is strong. But using the tools that are at hand to our political leaders to start quelling this and saying it's no longer acceptable to take the anarchy off our streets, this is really the place where the Marxist revolution and the New World Order push will die. It is on the streets, or it will thrive. But I don't believe it will ever totally thrive, and we're going to talk about that later. But they have a tremendous amount of violent rhetoric, and this is how they succeed. They constantly ramp up, constantly on the aggression. And the American people don't really want to get involved in that, and they count on it. They've counted on it for the best part of a century. And even before that, Karl Marx didn't really write anything new or original, to be honest with you. I mean, he talked about things with capitalism and other stuff that he hated. But the truth of the matter is, many of these tactics from Karl Marx have been around in the world for like millennia, so it's nothing really new, Just destabilizing a society and conquering it is not really like, a new thing. We want to make sure that we don't limit our rights as we go through this and other people's rights, but we have to be careful of this fight, and we have to keep our eye on it, because it is moving out of the streets of big cities and it's moving into our everyday lives. In many cases, they are utilizing economic hardship to get what they want. Constantly taking to the streets to protest, constantly taking to the streets to overturn any decency of concept. I'm saying I believe in free speech and I believe in the right to protest, but I'm talking about the destruction of other people's rights and the crushing of other people's beliefs and the abuse of other people in general and the violence that is out there. But we also have to keep in mind about something, that there's some good out there in this world, and there are good things happening, and all is far from lost in America by a long shot. We have to remember that, first of all, I'm really, really proud of some of some of them are Democratic leaders too, and the police union and other people have come in behind us and said, yeah, we really do need the help. And yeah, I'd like to have some reinforcements, and I'd like to have some things to calm our streets down and get a reprieve, and hopefully, get our ranks built up, put some more money into our coffers, and let's talk about how we can do a better job and, get back out enforcement and kind of crush some of these cartels. And the government has a great way of doing that on the international scale too. And I think we're kind of starting to see a little bit of that also. But it's a big game. And it's well entrenched, and that's really a problem. But we're starting to see some of these leaders say, you know what, this is kind of working. This is a new way forward. We can do this. And that's really exciting for me, and that's really a really great thing to see, with people coming out and joining in and saying, good is good. And we're seeing good things happen in our streets. Why should we fight that? And anyone who does probably is well entrenched in this Marxist revolution in our country. But the American people have something else. And we're a very different society than Germany was in the 1930s. And we're a very different society than Russia when the Tsar was overthrown. We're a very different society than many, many places. We were born of revolution. We cast off the tyrant. We started free society. I mean, well, not totally, but the writing our constitutional republic was a big moment in the world, the Declaration of Independence. And we have guarded it jealously for hundreds of years. It is bred in our bone to fight back on this. We believe in our institutions. We believe in our leaders. We try to. We believe in our nation, and justifiably so. But I think we're beginning to understand that some of those leaders have violated that trust. And we are pushing them aside, and we need to keep pushing them aside through the ballot box, through the jury box, and if necessary, through the cartridge box. We've long been empowered as a people to rise and push back on things. Like I said, we wear our problems on our shirt sleeve, and we struggle with them openly. I don't think the American people are going to take this lying down. Not at all. But we have reached a breaking point with much of that. I'm shocked to see police in cities like L.A. I mean, for those of you who are part of the shooting community, they're carrying 3, 4 spare mags, one in the gun. Most of these mags, 15, 20-round mags. And then they're keeping another 4 or 5 in their duty bags, just as to reload and rearm. That's not policing. That's combat. Okay? That's combat. That's what these men and women are facing. That's shocking to me. So why shouldn't we give them the reinforcements they need to be safe and to do their job well? Absolutely. Absolutely. And so we do have, the American people, through the ballot box, through the jury box, and through the ammo box, have the right to be empowered in this and to force change. But make no question about something. As a society, we also know that we have the power to rise above it all and to push back on these things. So let me kind of just get into a quick conclusion here on this. And I believe the evidence is indisputable that we are living through a well-planned and long-established Marxist revolution in our country. I also think it is clear that many leaders, particularly leaders in the Democratic Party, are living this moment and have been for some time. Or driving the moment, I mean. For far too long, we have used our tax dollars to finance their Marxist ideals and the destruction of our country. Utilizing trade and budget deficits and economic to crush the middle class and those who would oppose them, keeping American people off balance with inflation, tax, debt, and so on to keep them oppressed. The good news is that the American people have rejected this movement nationally, and many leaders are seeing a new way forward as bold actions are being taken. It's good stuff. The hour has grown late, and we must act with strength to crush the Marxist movement. Nonetheless, we must always be cautious that we don't allow our strong response to help these Marxists in our midst to reach their goals. Never believe that these Marxist leaders who seek greater gun control and the disarming of the American people care about your safety. They simply wish to disarm the great American militia, as I call it in books, so their thugs can have their way, unfettered by an armed population. Never underestimate this counter-revolution that is pushing back on this Marxist revolution. It is now being waged against the Marxist attack on free society. It will be won in the ballot box, the jury box, and on our streets. And we all have a role to play. This war will not be won in your house, hiding from the realities of this fight. So choose a side. Make a stand. I don't expect you to fight. I expect you to vote. And I expect you to call this what it is and seek justice. Marginalize those who would marginalize you. In our next episode, we're going to look at this point through a bit of a different lens. So I kind of want to carry on, and when we do this, and we're going to talk about, having a clear view of things, but I think we can take a different point of view and move forward and talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of it all right now. More to follow.